Hi, welcome to the training webinar. I'm Dale Franks, and today we are going to talk about the basics of custom tasks. For the last 4 weeks, we've been doing something pretty advanced with Process Director, but sometimes in the training webinars, we have to go back to basics. And I think it's fair to say that what we're going to talk about today is not only basic, but kind of fundamental to understanding one of the most important features of Process Director, which is the custom task system itself. So with that in mind, there's no reason to hesitate any longer. Let's get right into it. The custom tasks are not technically part of Process Director. They consist of some extra functionality that we have developed over the years that is extraordinarily useful for use with Process Director, but it isn't built into the product directly. The custom tasks are available from the support site, from the Process Director downloads page. And if you scroll down on the page, right below the application itself is the most recent release of the custom tasks. We do recommend that you check this on a recurring basis and to see when the latest release is. Now, right now, we've got a 13 March 2025 release of the custom tasks. That's about to change because we're about to update the package, and it will contain, if nothing else, the new custom task that I discussed on Tuesday in the Feature Spotlight webinar for decrypting files. So very shortly, we will have a new release of the custom tasks. We also issue new releases anytime we change a custom task or we update a custom task. For example, one of the newer custom tasks that we have is the export to CSV from REST, which takes a REST web service call from a business value, for example, takes the data from that web service call, which you'll receive either in JSON or XML, and will convert that data into a CSV file, which you can attach to your process or your form. We have two versions of that that we've had to issue, because the initial version, which came out, I think, around the first of the year, we later went back into it and made some improvements to it and changed the way that it works so that we could add in the ability to use JSON path as well as XPath to find data. And if you're confused about what JSON path and XPath is, I've got a webinar coming up on that in just a week or two, so we'll be discussing it then. In any event, go back and download these custom tasks on a recurring basis. Anytime you go in and notice that there's been a new release by looking at the release date, you need to download the custom tasks. Last month, I had a tech support ticket come in from someone who said, hey, my custom task is not doing what it's supposed to. I expected it to do this. The documentation says it does this, but mine isn't doing that. And I went into their system and discovered that they had not updated their custom tasks since 2019. Don't wait for 6 years to update your custom tasks. Do that on a recurring basis. When you import your custom tasks, they will import as a folder called custom tasks inside the square brackets. We strongly recommend that you place that in the root level of your partition. Now, remember, if you have two partitions like I do on this particular system, I'm going to need that custom task package imported into both partitions. Now, most of you don't have multiple partitions. Most of you have one partition, so it isn't relevant to you. But if you do have two, remember, the custom tasks don't work across partitions. In fact, nothing works across partitions. That's why they're called partitions. They're each a walled garden that doesn't talk to the other partition. So multiple partitions will require that you import the custom tasks into the same location in both places. Now, we recommend that you place them in the root level of the partition when you install them. A couple of reasons for that. The most recent reason for that is because we have all of these global objects, so data sources, the custom utilities, the global, well, they're not really the global knowledge use, but they are generic knowledge use that can be run against any process. They're all inside square folders, and with the content list in the 6.1 UI, I can turn those things off, or at least turn off my ability to see them whenever I'm looking at the content list on the left-hand side of the screen, so I can toggle those folders on and off. That's the least important reason. The most important reason is that whenever you import from your dev system onto your production system, as we've talked about several times, the way imports work is when we do an import between systems, we can't import GUIDs. So on a system, if I move things around, which I do constantly for the training webinar, right? If I go into my training webinar folder, I have a subfolder called archive. And that is where I keep all of the samples that I use in every single webinar. And what I do is I go in and I say, okay, well, here's the webinar I'm going to do. And I'm just going to move that, and I'm going to move it up here to training webinar. And I move it up there, we do the webinar, and then I go back in, I say move again, and I go back into the archive folder, and I can move it back. And that's all perfectly fine. And the reason that it's fine, and the reason that I can basically move things at will inside the partition, is because while I'm staying on the same machine, all of the links to every object is done via the object ID, the long GUID, that set of strings, that string of numbers and letters that uniquely identify each object in the system. And I don't really care where they are in the system. I don't need to care where they are in the system, other than to organize my content list so that things appear in the folder that I think they should appear in. Other than that, all of the links internally in the system are done via those GUIDs. So it doesn't matter what their location is, because I can uniquely identify them on the system. GUIDs don't export though. So when I export from one system to another, I have to look for the relative file path of a linked object. And then I have to look in that folder that is specified in the file path and match the object's name, right? So what I would expect, if I have a form that I'm importing from one system to another, and that form has a custom task associated with it, I've got to be able to find that custom task on the system. So if on both systems I have custom tasks, this folder in the root level of the partition, I'm just going to go all the way to the partition root. I'm going to look for a custom task folder. Fine, I found that folder, and then let's say it's a convert to PDF custom task. Then I'm going to need to look in the PDF custom task folder, and then I'm going to need to look for a custom task named convert to PDF. I have to match that name and file location. And as long as this folder is in the same place in both machines, which we also talked about during the last 4 weeks as we were doing the unified approvals deal, then I can always find those custom tasks. So when I import that form, and that form has a link to a custom task that it wants to run, I can just look in the custom tasks / PDF custom task folder, find that convert to PDF custom task, and relink it whenever I do the import. Honestly, it doesn't really matter where this custom tasks folder is, as long as wherever it is that you've placed it, it's in the exact same folder location on both your dev server and your production server, where you're going to be importing your forms and process timelines that may have those links. The best practice, of course, is to place it in the root of the partition. That way it's all the same. Plus, on the content list, I can make it appear and disappear simply by toggling the system folders. Usually, I keep the system folders toggled off because under normal circumstances, don't really care to look at them. But it's nice to be able to toggle those system folders and turn them on and off as needed uh, whenever you're using the content list. So they always should go there in that custom task directory. Like I said, all of these custom tasks are basically little tiny mini applications that we have created, or in some cases, a customer has created and given to us. For example, the Advanced Show Alert custom task. This custom task, if we preview its custom config, I think it actually says it on the bottom of the custom task. This was actually developed by one of our customers at the city of Fort Worth, and they shared this custom task with us. We thought it was a great custom task, which it is, and it offers a really cool range of functionality for showing alert boxes from a form, and as well as being able to invoke buttons and call other functions from the form whenever you use the alert box. And this came to us from one of our customers, Sean Campbell at the city of Fort Worth, who provided this for us. In fact, I think he's provided us with a couple of custom tasks. So they can come from customers because you can, of course, build your own custom tasks, assuming you have a C# ASP.NET developer. You can develop your own custom tasks. Oh, there we go. Right down at the bottom, it says a Sean Campbell creation. So we have the little note down there at the bottom to provide attribution. So this is not something that we developed at BP Logix, which means, of course, that you can develop your own custom tasks. And were you to do so, so let's say you were to add a form custom task, you can do that. You can create your own custom task and still import all of the custom tasks from the packages. Because when you import the custom task from the package that you download from the support site, certainly it will overwrite all of these custom tasks with the new versions of them that are part of the package that you download. But if you have your own custom task as part of this folder structure and you've placed it somewhere inside any of the custom task folders, it will not get overwritten. It will not get deleted. It will simply, exist and have its own rich, free, and independent life without worrying about the BP Logix custom tasks that are part of the custom task package. So if you're interested in custom tasks, please check out the developer's guide. We have some explanation of how you can build those custom tasks that you might need for some unique function that you would like Process Director to do and that you want to be able to use on any form or process timeline. So that's always available as an option to you, assuming, of course, that you're licensed to use the SDK. If you don't have an SDK license, then obviously you wouldn't be able to create your own custom tasks or really to edit the custom tasks that exist in the system. In any event, custom tasks are not just things that we provide, and they're not just separate little applications from us, but you can, with the appropriate licensing, create your own. Not all of these custom tasks work. They all used to. So there are the MS Dynamics custom tasks, the OData custom tasks, the Salesforce custom tasks. I would love for them to work right out of the box, and they used to. However, back about, I don't know, 6, 7 years ago, a company called CData acquired the rights to all of the data connectors that fall under the OData type of data connector. Prior to that time, they would just charge us a single license for using them, and we could use them and create all of these custom tasks. And that was great. But then CData acquired them, and CData requires that if you want to use any of these custom tasks, you must purchase a separate license from CData to use them. So we put all of this work into creating these custom tasks, and we actually had customers who would use Salesforce fairly frequently, and then all of a sudden, due to licensing changes, their custom tasks no longer worked. There's nothing we can do about that. We don't control the license for the OData type of data connector, so that has to be done from by purchasing a license from CData. But it exists, and if you purchase the license, you can activate those custom tasks. Each custom task has a version number that is separate from Process Director. So let's look at there's a form custom task. I was going to try to look at a more recent one, but I guess it doesn't really matter. Let's just go back to PDF since I've already opened it and I know that it's compiled and we can see it and we can preview it again. Let's go to the convert PDF custom task once again. Let's preview its custom configuration. And well, no, it wasn't this custom task. It was the advanced fill dropdowns, but it doesn't matter. It compiled really quickly. And here we go. At the very bottom of every custom task, there's a little text snippet there that gives you the custom task version. So in this case, the convert to PDF has a version number of 2025.04.10, which tells you that this custom task was released on March 10th, 2025. That was when it was last updated or changed. Custom tasks are separate from Process Director. Technically, you don't even need to put the custom tasks in your Process Director installation. I mean, you could never use custom tasks at all. I think it'd be enormously inconvenient, but you could do it because they're not really part of the application. Therefore, they're not directly related to the application itself. In most cases, a couple of years ago, back in one of the 5 dot something versions, we made a fundamental change to how the database worked in Process Director. And we switched over to AES encryption for encrypting your data at rest. When we did that, we also had to update all of the custom tasks to use AES encryption for the data that gets stored with custom tasks when you configure them. And so custom tasks from before that date would no longer work with Process Director. And similarly, custom tasks from after that date would not work with the earlier versions. There was just no backwards compatibility from AES encryption. That's a very, very rare case. In most cases, the custom tasks are completely independent of the Process Director version, and you can just keep updating the custom tasks and it doesn't matter. Now, that's not always true. For example, the new custom task that we just created, the decrypt files custom task, this one right here, this decrypt files custom task simply can't be used for any version of Process Director earlier than 6.1.3.13. The reason is because it requires some cryptographic libraries that never existed in the product prior to this. They have to exist in the product. And the only way they can exist in the product is if you install 6.1.3.13 or obviously higher. So this custom task, you could actually run it on your system. It would show you an error message that says, I can't run on your system. You don't have the required cryptographic libraries. But I mean, you can still import it onto an earlier system. You just can't run it. It's just not, it's just a non-working object in the system, but it doesn't mess anything up. It works just fine because, again, custom tasks are not part of the system. This bothers me a lot because this says March 23rd, 2025, That should be an 830, I think, not a 423, because this is a new custom task. I may want to contact the engineering team and have them give this the correct custom task version number. Um, on the other hand, I think this is a development version that I pulled off onto training because I'm not running 313 either. So I could not run this custom task off of the machine that we happen to be looking at right now. In any event, in most cases, the functionality of the custom task and the functionality in Process Director are not closely interrelated. So we can update the product and update the custom tasks independently, just as we release them independently on the downloads page. So as you can see, we've got an 8 September 25 release for the product, but we're still on the 13 March 2025 release for the custom tasks, though, as I mentioned, that'll be changing soon. There are some custom tasks that are largely deprecated and you shouldn't use anymore because we have, in fact, incorporated those custom tasks into the product itself. So if we go and look at a form, so let's open my CT Basics form here. We now have, and have had since version 4, the Set Form Data tab on a form definition and the Fill Dropdowns tab on a form definition. In addition, we have the business value object that enables us to grab data from external data sources. Prior to version 4.5, or maybe even 4.53, or maybe even a little later, this Fill Dropdowns tab and this Set Form Data tab did not exist in the form definition. The only way that I could grab external data to set the value of a form field, well, didn't even need to be external data. If I just wanted to set the value of a form field to X using text, this was not available to me. And if I wanted to fill any drop downs with any values outside of the, connecting it to a drop down object itself, if I needed to grab anything from, any sort of database at all, well, then I had to use the database connectors custom tasks, and we have a whole bunch of custom tasks that were designed to do nothing but either fill fields or to fill the options in a drop-down control. So we've got 2 fill drop-downs. We have 2 fill fields. We have advanced fill fields. Actually, we've got 3 fill drop-downs. Fill drop-down from DB, fill fields from DB, advanced fill drop-down, advanced fill drop-down object, advanced fill fields. We had a lot of different ways of trying to go out and grab data and to either set data in a form or fill drop-downs. Because business rules exist, so I can always access external data anytime from anywhere in any form, and because forms now have the Set Form Data and Fill Dropdowns tab, pretty much everything in here, not all of it, because there are some really weird ones like array SQL command, and also just the SQL command custom task itself. Outside of those, clone table from DB. So there's another one that is useful in some circumstances. But outside of that, most of these database connectors custom tasks are largely, and I say largely, not entirely, deprecated. There are still some circumstances where you might want to use one of the custom tasks for that. But for the most part, you're going to do this via business values. Now, the thing with business values is that business values exposes the data to anyone who has the ability to configure a form. They can see all of the data in that business value ultimately if they decide to use it in a form. So there may be circumstances where you have some data that is rather closely held and you don't want to virtualize it by creating a business value. Because remember, when you create a business value, it virtualizes the data so I can drop that business value in any form or any process timeline, pull the data back, evaluate it, change data on the forms with it. It is a global object that any of your implementers can use. And for most cases, that's fine. There are some cases where the data is so highly proprietary that you do not want to expose it, or you only want to have it accessed from a single form during a specific event, and you don't want to give anybody access to it outside of that specific context. So, in a case like that, the fill fields or fill drop downs from DB custom tasks are still useful because I can't replicate that anywhere else outside that form. I would have to be able to know how to manually configure it from scratch and know where it was in the database and know the appropriate SQL to make it work. Um, Unlike a business value where it's just an object that returns data, and anybody who can configure something to drop a business value in it can use it. So for private or highly sensitive data, there's still a use case for these. I think probably 95 to 99% of the time, you don't really care about any of these fill drop downs or fill fields from database anymore. Most custom tasks can be used in either a form or a process timeline. This is not universally true, but in general, most custom tasks can be invoked from a form or process timeline. Now, there are obviously some custom tasks that are only relevant to a form and that wouldn't make sense outside the context of a form. In fact, some of the form custom tasks, I think, are like that, like get geolocation. I'm not going to run that off of a process timeline. I'm going to run that off of a form because I'm generally going to want to be able to get the geolocation data of the user's current location. That's what it does. It was basically designed for municipalities who have a lot of inspectors who are running around with mobile devices. And if they are doing code infraction stuff and handing out citations, they need to be able to geolocate the exact location where they've handed out that citation or where they have seen some sort of violation of city ordinance, building codes, whatever it may be. And what get geolocation does is when they run the form, it actually gets their location from the mobile device and places it in the form in terms of their GPS coordinates. You just wouldn't use it in a process timeline. Similarly, the mobile form import, it only works with the mobile device component or the mobile application component, but it's the custom task that actually goes out to Apponate, grabs all of the forms that have been submitted via mobile device that were unconnected to your network, because that's what the purpose is. I need to send people out. They don't have any connection to my network, but they need to be able to fill out forms and submit those forms. The mobile device, which we use the Apponate service to create that mobile device and to store your forms, that all gets stored on Apponate because it's a publicly accessible website. For on-premise customers, the mobile form import is important because if somebody's outside your network, just using some sort of mobile device, they don't have any connection to your network if they're out of wireless range of your network, then they're just on the open internet. And your process director installation is usually or often behind a firewall, so it's not accessible. So with the mobile app component, you can submit your forms, they go to Apponate, and then you can import those form instances from Apponate to create process director form instances on import. Well, you can't run that from a form. You got to run that off of a process timeline. So this is a process timeline custom task, or actually it's a process custom task, whereas get geolocation would be a form custom task. Similarly, form save. That's a form custom task. It literally just saves the form. It doesn't have any context in which it can be used outside a form. Those are exceptions rather than the rule. Most custom tasks can be run from the form or from the process. So then the question then becomes, okay, when do I run a custom task? Should I run it from the form or and configure it on the custom task event mapping tab, or should I run it inside a process? For example, in the process timeline, if I create an activity, I actually have the custom task activity type, which enables me to select and configure the custom task that I want to use. When would I do one or the other? It's not entirely cut and dried, but I can give you some general advice about how it should work. In general, if I am going to run a custom task that is not related to the process itself, then I should probably run it. I don't actually want to leave. I actually want to save that because I'm fairly sure I'm going to be coming back here. So let me save that and then we'll go back to the form. So if it is unrelated to the process, I would run it from the form. For example, let's say that I wanted to send out a special notification whenever a certain form field value equals X, or even if, just to put a button on a form to say, if you want to notify somebody of something, click here. One of the other things that I have, which I've demonstrated, I think on a couple of occasions, is having a little Q&A process where I have this main form and it's to submit a purchase order or whatever it is, but I want to be able to ask questions of other users. That's a separate process. And it's also an asynchronous process. So it doesn't hold up my main process at all. It operates independently. So if I wanted to send that notification, for example, right, I would just create a little process timeline that had one activity, a notification activity. I'd specify where I'd want that notification to go and create the appropriate email template for it. And then I might just put a button on the form. And on that button, I would just want to use the run process custom task. So I'm looking for process right there. And we go, run process. We'll add that. And I don't have a button on the form. Let's just pretend that my button is called no event. So I would just select that button on the form, and then I could just run that process. Now, when that process kicks off, all it's going to do is just invoke that notification activity, send out the email, and then it's going to end. So that's a great example for when I would want to put a custom task in a form. Another time I'd want to put a custom task into a form is whenever it modifies a form behavior or a dependency. So obviously, if I was going to use a fill dropdown or fill fields custom task, so let's go with the advanced fill dropdown from DB. So if I'm going to do something like that, that only affects the form, then obviously I would run this as a form custom task. And then I would just go ahead and configure it to find my database information, return the fields that I needed to return, and do whatever it was that I needed to do. Similarly, if I'm going to run any sort of SQL command, well, you know what? I can think of a good reason not to run it on the form. And that's not really a form dependency, so we'll leave that one aside. But the advanced fill dropdown, advanced fill fields, I'd probably run those from the form rather than the process timeline. It's possible I might run those from the process timeline because they will work for both, but in general, I wouldn't. In general, especially for fill dropdown, I'd probably want to run that on the form. And in most cases, I'd probably want to run that on the form display event. The reason being is that every time that form is refreshed, I need to be sure that the right data is placed inside that dropdown and fills it. I can't think of a scenario where it would be appropriate to use that in a process timeline because it so directly affects the form and it has to be run conceivably quite often during the form's life cycle, from the time someone opens the form to the time they close it or save it or submit it. So then I would run from the form. Similarly, if I'm going to run a custom task off the process timeline, I'm doing it because it should be part of the process itself. So, set form data, the example that I always use for set form data is setting the request number field in the form. And I don't want to do that in the form. And this is one of those wonky cases where normally I might run the set form data from the form itself, but if I'm setting the form data and I'm using the sequence number system variable, that is going to be invoked on the form somewhere. It might be invoked on the form multiple times. And each time it gets invoked, the sequence number increments, right? So let's say that I was in the form, and we'll just go ahead and we'll just show you an example of it. Let me get rid of these example custom tasks here. And so let's go back in here and go to form data mapping, and we'll go to set form data. We'll add that as a custom task. And let's just say the display event. And we think, well, display event would be great. Where is form display? There it is. We say the display event will be great. The form will open up, it'll display, and it'll set my sequence number. And I'll go into my custom task, which is really easy to set up. I don't even need to set the data source form because I'm running it in the form, which we'll talk about in a minute. And well, I don't have a form control, but let's say that it was request number, and I just wanted to set it to some sort of sequence number. Okay, great. So I don't think I have a number called or sequence number in the category my sequence. So the first time I ran this and the first time the form opened, then this sequence number would be 1. Great, good enough so far. But what happens if I have a form field that is an event field? Well, that event field, when it fires, is going to re-invoke a refresh of the form, which means the display event is going to fire again. So now my sequence number is 2. And every time an event fires, my sequence number is going to increment. There is, in fact, no way on the form. If I'm going to invoke a sequence number, there's no way to do it on the form without burning sequence numbers. Because let's say I say, okay, well, let's only do it on, form complete. So the sequence number will set itself whenever the form is complete. Okay, sounds good, except whenever somebody opens the form and they create it and they submit the form, the sequence number will be 1. Then the first reviewer is going to open up the form to complete their task. And they're going to click the little button that says complete task. And because we've set this on form complete, the form will again complete. And the sequence number will now iterate to 2. And every time a new reviewer opens the form, completes their review task, and submits their review task, form complete event is going to fire, and it's going to increment that sequence number again. So I can't use the set form data tab to do this. I can't use this custom task to do it, at least not as part of the form, because there's no way to do it without burning sequence numbers one way or another that I don't want to burn. And of course, it will constantly change what the sequence number is for this specific request. Well, that's never a good thing. So this is one of those cases where even though it is a set form data and where I would normally, because I'm changing stuff on the form, I would normally do a set form data on the form. Indeed, I normally wouldn't even do a set form data on the form. What I would normally do is go to the set form data tab and place the change to the form field in whatever event was appropriate. In that particular case, I want to have a lot more control over when that gets invoked. So what I would probably do in that case is, as you've seen me demonstrate before, I would go in and set that custom task on the process timeline. even though I'm modifying the form, I really need to do it in the process timeline. Now, there is one major difference between configuring a form and a timeline custom task or any process custom task. On the form itself, when I'm using the custom form or custom task mapping tab, uh, the assumption that is made automatically is that the form on which I am configuring that custom task is the source data for the custom task. I don't necessarily know that that's true in a process timeline. So when I'm using a custom task at the process level, so again, let's just use convert to PDF. That's sort of the simple go-to and one of the most common custom tasks. Um, okay, whatever happened there was not what I expected to happen. Let's try that again. So we'll go to PDF custom task, convert to PDF. We'll add the custom task. There we go. That's what I expected to see. And what I see at the top, and this is a little confusing because of the way the UI changes, and it's very subtle. If I remove this custom task, I've got this user picker up here that says custom task. Now, right now, it's to enable me to pick and add the custom task, right? So I go into PDF custom task, convert to PDF, and I click add custom task. Okay, and now there's still a user picker up here. It's not the same, it's different because I'm inside the context of a process and I might have multiple forms associated with this process. Process Director doesn't know what my container form should be. Now, for some custom tasks, it doesn't matter. For example, convert to PDF is one of those custom tasks where it often doesn't matter what the container form is. Because when I configure that custom task, I can just say, you know what, give me all of the process references, give me everything, convert it to attach objects back to the process, and convert everything to a PDF. And by the way, while we're at it, let's merge all of the PDFs into a single PDF and let's rock and roll. Well, with this configuration, what I have said is I just want to grab everything that is attached to the process. Every form, every document attachment, everything. I just want to grab them and convert them to PDF. So in this context, it is not strictly necessary to set a container form because it doesn't matter. On the other hand, if I am going to use a custom task, I guess I have to delete this. Let's say I want to take a form and copy it, right? Like I have a purchase request and I want to take this purchase request once approved and I want to copy all of the data into a new form to create my purchase order, which will ultimately be, printed out and or at least converted to PDF and emailed to whoever it is that I'm buying stuff from. I've got to convert that data from the purchase request to create the purchase order. I don't know why accountants have to make everything so complicated, but they do, and that's often how it works. Okay, great. So if I'm going to do that, then what I'm going to need to use is copy form data. So I'm going to take data from one form and I'm going to place it into another form. Okay, it's super important now that I set my container form because I need to know the form from whence the data is coming. And then in the copy form data, I'm going to determine how and where to copy that data. So in a case like copy form data, this set container form then becomes super important because I need to specify my source form. What is the source of my data? I only have one form, which is my CT Basics form. But great, because now that I've set that, I can open up the configuration. And you may, in fact, often see an error whenever you're because I see it. I'm like cowboying through a custom task in a process timeline, and I don't set that basics form. And or that container form. And often when that happens, I get an error at the top of the custom task that says, not so fast there, Sparky. I don't know where your data is coming from, so I don't know what it is I'm supposed to be sticking data into. So in this case, I do need to set that custom task because all of my configuration, I do need to set that container form because all of my configuration inside the copy form data custom task is configuration for setting up what the destination form and the destination form fields are going to be and how it's going to be attached and all of that other stuff. And it needs to know what the data is because when I start clicking add mapping, it's going to want to know what my source control is. I don't have any form fields in that form, so there's nothing that it can show me here. But if I don't have that set container form set, it cannot uh, enable me to select the source form control because it doesn't know what form that source form control is coming from. So I can't map fields from my source form to my destination form. So for many custom tasks that you run from a process timeline, especially any task that's dealing with form data, you are going to need to set that container form. Yeah, technically it's optional, but some things just aren't going to work unless you set it. Convert to PDF, doesn't care, works fine. Copy form data cares really a lot, and it won't work fine if you don't have that container form set. In fact, I'm going to see if I can just invoke the error by going to no selection here and hitting configure and adding mapping. Yeah, it says please configure a container form first. So I simply it's I mean it's technically not an error. Something hasn't gone wrong. It's just not configurable because I haven't set the container form. And this will be quite common where if you don't set the container form, you simply won't be able to configure the custom task the way you're supposed to until you go back and do it. So that is set container form. In general, if what you're trying to do is unrelated to the behavior of the form itself, you can use the custom task as a process custom task. Of course, that's not entirely true because I use the set form data custom task, as I've explained, basically every time we've addressed the topic, I use that as a process timeline activity. Again, I don't really need to do that because technically process timelines have a set form data tab. Well, this is a process timeline activity. So let's just go to, yeah, it's the set form data tab. They all share the same set form data tab. I select the event task end or task start, and I add whatever action I want. We'll just have a blank action here, but I have an action that's added. And at the very top, I'm going to have a set form data section. So I can actually go into the set form data section on the process timeline, and I can use set form data to set that sequence number. I don't actually need to do it from a process timeline activity. But that gets us into making your applications understandable. I think if I were to set the sequence number, which I could certainly do, I could do it, on task start for, activity one, which is the only activity I have. And I could set my sequence number there. Everything would be fine. I actually wouldn't even need activity one, or it wouldn't matter what activity one was. I mean, if activity one happened to be a user activity, still doesn't matter because I can still set my form data on that activity and it would run fine. It would basically happen in the background. The reason that I don't do that is because set form data isn't super obvious in a process timeline. And while technically, if I open the activity and go to its set form data tab, I will see the set form data action as part of this user activity. but that sure is kind of hidden. It isn't very transparent. So that's why in cases like the sequence number, and there may be other cases like that where I might be able to set the data here in the process timeline, but for reasons of transparency, I might prefer, like with the setting the sequence number, I might prefer to do that via a custom task so that it's explicit what I'm doing and when I'm doing it. So for me, the very first activity would always be the set request number activity, and it would always run that custom task. So it is a little trickier determining when I'm going to run between form and process timeline in some cases. But in general, if I'm doing anything outside of the form itself, it's probably best to run the custom task in the process timeline. It's probably best if you're going to do a convert to PDF. It's probably best if you just make that part of your process and have the PDF converted automatically at some point in your process. The metadata custom tasks, that's one of those where it's also really tricky. When would I use it? Would I use it on the form or would I use it on the process timeline? That really depends on your use case. So there's no hard and fast rules about when you're going to use them, although there are a couple of custom tasks that will only work in a process timeline, others that will only work on a form. And the vast majority of them, you just sort of have to make the judgment call about where it makes the most sense to run that custom task. And I think the most important question is, do you want the user to see the thing, whatever the thing is? Do you want the user to see the thing happen? If the answer is yes, I want the user to watch it happen, as it happens. And I want them to be able to see the activity, whatever it may be occurring. Okay, great. Then put it on the form. If I don't want the user to see this, I want this all to happen in the background, then place it on the process timeline because then it largely gets hidden from the user. There are a couple of caveats to that, however, because of the way some of the custom tasks work. I don't have one, I think, that I can demonstrate it here, but let's add the convert to PDF here. So we'll go to PDF custom task. We'll hit convert to PDF. We'll add that and we'll pretend like we configured it. And we'll even change the activity name. Convert to PDF. Okay, well enough so far. Now, in most cases, this is going to be fine, right? I'm going to take my form, which actually has no fields, and my convert to PDF doesn't have any configuration on it as well. So it's not going to run. So let me at least do minimal configuration of this custom task. So we'll grab process references, we'll attach objects to the process, and okay, we're good to go. Those are all of the required fields. So now I know that this custom task will at least work. Okay, great. So what's going to happen is I am going to open my form and I'm going to submit the form. And the very first thing that's going to happen is a convert to PDF. I don't think we're going to get to see it happen, but we may see enough of a delay to make it worthwhile. So I filled out my form. I've entered all the form fields. I'm going to hit submit. Okay, now I have this very long loading screen. So it is going to take me a while and then it goes away. That was a super long wait. And the reason that super long wait occurred is when I submit the form, the very next step that occurs, the only step in this process, in fact, is convert to PDF. Now, it wasn't too onerous just now because, quite honestly, there's really nothing to convert. I've converted a blank form. But what if I had a whole bunch of images and documents and all sorts of other things, like a 150-page Word document, and that needed to be converted to PDF, along with many images or what have you? That's going to take a long time. In fact, we can open this, and I mean, it took a couple of seconds simply to get us to produce this. That seems like a real easy PDF to convert. Doesn't seem like there's a lot of activity that's going on place it's going taking place in the background. And honestly, there's not, although there is a certain irreducible amount of effort to take an HTML form and to convert the contents of that HTML form, even if blank, to PDF. So for us, it took a couple of seconds. Now imagine that was a large Word document with lots of images. That might be a 5, 10, 15, 20-second operation. So in a case like that, where this activity to convert to PDF happens the second that I submit the form, I'm going to see that loading spinny going for a long, long time because the form is not going to close until that activity, the conversion activity completes. It's holding the form open for a reason, by the way, because I might be assigned the next activity. Let's make it even a little more realistic. So here is my convert to PDF. It's going to happen. And then activity 2 is going to occur. And I am the participant of activity 2. So what's going to happen now is I'm going to click the submit button on my form. And then if it's a lengthy PDF conversion process, I'm going to have to sit there and wait and wait and wait until that conversion is done. Then the form is going to reload for me and it's going to place me inside the context of the task and it's going to give me my task completion buttons, whatever they might happen to be. And now I can complete that form. But I still had that sort of, 15, 20, 30-second wait while I was trying to convert this massive Word document and Excel file and form all to PDF. So I don't actually see the magic happen, but I am having to wait for a long time for that convert to PDF to occur before the form reloads and sends me to my next activity. So you do need to keep in mind that even though we are kind of hiding this from the users, there are some PDFs that take a long time and therefore they're difficult to overcome. Now, I do have the ability to sort of elide past that long wait when I'm running those sort of custom tasks that take a long time to run. In the advanced options for the custom task activity, I do have the ability to run this activity in the background. It says if unsure, leave this box unchecked. What run activity in the background is going to do is it's basically going to let the process timeline continue to move forward, and it's going to do that PDF conversion in the background. It's going to take however long it takes to do that PDF conversion. Ultimately, when it's done, it's going to be displayed. That's great, but now technically what that means is I can submit this form and it will invoke this rather lengthy convert to PDF process. And while it's skipping past that and it doesn't delay me, it now goes directly into activity 2. And I can actually open up activity 2. Well, I was going to open it like I would see the form or something. I would open up activity 2 and do whatever it was that I needed to complete the task. And I might never see the attachment for that PDF. It may never show up on the form. I could conceivably complete activity 2 and submit the form before the PDF conversion was even complete. So you do have to be careful about that with something like convert to PDF, simply because it takes such a long time to run. Okay, those are the basics of custom tasks and their use and about when you would want to use them. What are the most common custom tasks that you are going to use? The most common one will be the set form data that we've already looked at. We're just going to set the value of a form control. Again, it's very special use case. In most cases, I'm going to use the set form data tab on either the activity or on the form. And probably 9 times out of 10, I'm going to do it on the form. And I'm just going to go to that set form data tab and use it there. But because of the way that, as we just discussed, I might want to use that set form data for request numbers, it can be one of the most common custom tasks that you use. The next most important common custom task is the set focus custom task. So let's go back to my form here, and we'll just leave all of that stuff because the configuration doesn't really matter much. And let's go to my form. As you saw, it has no controls, but I guess we're going to have to put some controls on it. So let me just grab a table here. Actually, I don't want to grab a table yet. So let me add a text box control and then a second text box control. And now we'll add a table, and we'll just make it one row with 2 columns. And inside this table, and you know what? It doesn't, most commonly, this is where it occurs. But let's not confuse it by adding in arrays or any of that other stuff. Let's just add more text boxes. There we go. I'll add 5 text boxes. And let's make text box number 4 an event field. So now it is an event field. Great. Let's run our form. So we'll give it a second to save and compile. Our form should pop up. It's a real simple form. And if I hit my tab key, it's going to tab into field 1. And I can set the value there. And I can hit tab again, field 2, field 3, field 4. Uh-oh, something bad has happened. I am not in field 5. Where am I? I'm back at the beginning. Because I made a field an event field, it hasn't broken the tab order. I mean, my tab order still works. If I tab 5 times, it will get to this field and allow me to fill it out. Great. But the thing that happened here, you saw maybe for just a second, this text was highlighted and then it went back to this. And the reason it went back to this is because this is an event field. It refreshed the form. And when it refreshed the form, it took my cursor and brought it all the way back up to the top of the form. And now I've got to go through every field. It's not that big of a deal if it's, field 4 of 5 fields. If it is field 39 of 40 fields and it resets my tab order, that's a problem. And I'm not going to be a happy camper. What I need to be able to do is account for this event firing on this particular form field and overcome the challenge that causes to me. And that, of course, is where the set focus custom task comes in. So again, this is a custom task that makes no sense and cannot be used outside the context of a form. This is a form custom task. So we'll go to form and we'll go to set focus. We'll add that custom task. It's super easy to configure. I need to know the event that fires, which is input 4. And then to configure it, I just need to specify the field that I want to be the next field in the tab order. In other words, the field that will receive focus after this event fires. Obviously, I want that to be input 5. Super simple to configure, but you usually have to configure it any time that you have an event field on a form, because if you don't, your tab order gets reset. What I want to be able to happen is to hit tab, 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 and then tab to submit and submit my form. That time, my tab order worked exactly the way it was supposed to, because the set focus custom task ensured that my focus, whenever I was tabbing my way through this control, always goes to input 5 when the input 4 event occurs. I kind of think the set focus, I kind of think there should be a set focus tab on the form definition. Oh my goodness, I am an idiot. Why didn't I think of this 5 years ago? Why am I only thinking of it literally right now at this moment? I've got a set form data tab. Makes sense. Don't need the set form data. And I use it a lot. Fill dropdowns, use it all the time. Great. Has a tab on the form. Set focus. I need it all the time. Anytime that I have an event field, I need a set focus custom task. I am going to submit a JIRA ticket to the engineering team to create a set focus tab on the form definition. I don't know if they'll ever do it, but I'm going to suggest it. However, until and if, and only if that is makes it into the product, this is our one way of being able to set focus. I just have to use that custom task. So I'm going to use that set focus all the time. The next one that I'm going to use all the time, and this one is also a tricky one because I actually have a validation rules tab on the form. Now, the validation rules tab is fine. However, the way form validation occurs is it doesn't happen until I hit the submit button. When I hit the submit button, all of my form fields are validated. So if I have any validation rules, say this form field must equal X and this form field must equal Y, and this form field is required, then I'm going to need those validation rules. And when I submit the form, they'll all pop off at the same time. And if 5 things are wrong on the form, I'll get the message that tells me what 5 things I want to fix. And that's fine, I guess, in most circumstances. However, it is kind of cool that we have a validate form custom task. Actually, we have 2 of them. We have validate form and validate form field. I'm looking for form. We'll go with validate form, and we'll just add that to the custom task. And once again, we'll set it for the input 4 event, and we'll configure this custom task and give it a second to show up. Okay. Most of the time, when form validation fires, like I said, it's going to validate everything. And it's only going to fire when I submit the form. However, sometimes I want the form to validate before I submit it. I want it to validate the second I fill out a form field. And I might not want it to validate the entire form. I might only want to validate the form that I am specifically trying to validate at this moment in time. Well, that's cool. I have the ability to do that. So now there is a skip validation rules. Now I do have a validation rules tab that we just looked at, and it doesn't matter with the way that I'm going to configure this one, but I do have the ability to skip those custom validation rules. And it says validate controls only. Skipping validation rules will actually do what is called control validation. It'll go through if a control is required, then that control will flag a validation error if you haven't filled it out. Or if that field has to be a certain format, like it has to be an email field and you haven't put in an email address, that validation will fail when it validates that form field because it's not in the right format. So those kind of events will still fire if you turn that on, but none of the rules that you had created, any of the custom rules that you created on the validate rules or validation rules tab, none of them will run. Generally, that's not what you do. Generally, you want to do like what I'm trying to do. I want to validate a single control, and I only want to validate the control that runs this custom task. So I can do my form validation on just, in this case, input 4. That's the only field I want validated. I don't want to validate the rest of the form. And this is very useful if I have a situation on a form where I might want to validate something near the top of the form. For example, as I'm filling out my general information, I might have 40 fields on the form. There's another 10 of them that might be required, but I haven't filled them out yet because they occur, later on in the form filling out process. I'm still, near the top of the form and I run into this field that needs to be validated. Well, I don't want to validate the form. I know the form is not going to validate because I know that when I get to this field, I might still have 10 required fields that I haven't even seen yet and certainly haven't filled out. So I don't want to validate them and come up with a validation message that's going to have, 10 fields plus whatever it is that I'm trying to validate here. That's just going to get super confusing. So since I know that my form is automatically going to fail validation no matter what I do, I only want to validate this specific field and I want to validate it validate it. I want to validate it in real time. Okay, cool. I can do that. I can validate only the event control which runs this custom task. It is going to be input 4 because I've already set that. So I don't actually have a validation rule for it. So I'm probably going to have to create one here. So let me update my form and we'll go to the validation rules tab. So there's a reason why I didn't check that checkbox because I want this validation rule to run. And we'll just go with input 4 contains A to make it simple. So as long as there's an A somewhere in input 4, um, let's say I want there to be an A in that field. And if there's no A, I want the validation to fail. So I want the validation to fail in this case if condition is not met. So if the field contains an A, we're cool. If it doesn't, then I need it to validate that field and it needs to fail validation. So, so there's no A. And the form field that I'm validating, again, is input 4. In this case, my validation condition and the form field I'm validating are the same thing. So now I can update and run. We can cross our fingers here and we can just tab our way through the form. Oh, wait a second. I've made a mistake because the word poipo doesn't contain an A. So let's set this to poipoa and we'll hit tab and my validation error goes away. This makes it really convenient for me just to be able to validate in real time on a control simply by calling that validate form control and setting it just to validate, in this case, input 4, letting me know that I have to have, at the very minimum, an A in that field. And once I put the A in, it passes my validation and I can move on to my next field. And if this field 5 here, if it had been required, uh, that validation wouldn't have mattered because I'm only validating that single field only input for via my custom task. So that custom task is also a very useful one. The other one is show alert. We have to show alerts for a lot of things that happen. So once again, we go to form and show alert. Now, the basic show alert is the real simple one. It's the one you'll probably use most often. Once again, since I have an event on input 4, we're going to use that. And I'm going to take this custom task as a caption. This is going to be the main caption that appears for the alert box. And this is the alert box text. And there are a couple of standard system icons for this. Um, I can have no icon, an info icon, a success, a warning icon. We'll just go with warning for right now. And I can test it from here. Great. This is a caption. This is the alert box text. Perfect. So this is great when I just need to tell people something is going to happen. So if I update and run, or I just want to give them some extra information. So if I go here and I fill out that field, I didn't add an A, so it failed validation. And so let's add an A. Um, Not sure why it's not giving me my alert text there. It tested just fine. Oh, well, uh, that's not good. Nothing got saved. So it's actually showing me exactly what was configured, I guess. That's what I expect to see. And we'll hit OK and we'll update. And let's try that again. Okay, well, it worked that time. I'm not sure what I did. Maybe I hit cancel instead of close on that custom task and it canceled my configuration. Whatever it was, that's there. Now, I showed you briefly the advanced show alert. Um, and what time is it? Oh, okay, we have plenty of time. I'm certainly going to be able to finish. Um, Let me configure that one for you. We're not going to go through the whole configuration, but it is pretty extensively documented. Form, advanced show alert. And we'll add that. This is a much more complex text box because it has a lot more features to it. Uh, so basically, any sort of alert box you want to generate, you can here. So you have the same alert caption and alert text. So basically these two things, oh, and the alert icon. That's all the same. This is what the basic alert box does. But now I have some extra options. So for my caption, I can set the alert text size and I can also set it whether it's bold, italic, or underlined. So if I want to have 48 point text, I guess, or 48 pixel text, I guess I can. And if I want to have this is the alert text message, and I want that to be, I guess, italic, and let's use 12px. Let's just make it very difficult to read. Um, I can choose my icons from the standard icons, but it also gives me the icon chooser. So I can actually go into the icon chooser and pick a different icon. So let's pick an orange uh, highway, I guess. That's my icon size. And you know what? I want it to be a big icon. So I want it to be, no, I don't want it to be 48. I want it to be 128 pixels. I am probably going way beyond what I need to go through for this alert box. I'm afraid to test it. Oh, actually, that's not bad. I can live with that. Um, it has all the basic stuff, but it also enables you to add a footer and configure that footer and to set the position that you want that footer to appear in when it appears. Can the alert grow in size? Sure, if you want it to. You can also add a confirm button with its own text and color and whatever. And you can choose the form control to have as the one that will invoke that. You know what? I can't remember what the choose form control is for that. I'd have to look at the documentation myself. It has been a while since I've used this one. You can also add a cancel button and sort of do the same thing. You can add an image to the alert box. And most importantly, you can click a button for whenever I can also add input fields too to the alert box. There's also, okay, the show confirm button. That's what we're looking for. It's the form button to click after confirm. The label is in the wrong place. Boy, that confused me a lot. Okay. What? There we go. That's kind of what it's supposed to look like. If I have a confirmation button, usually an alert box just has an OK, but I can actually show a confirm button, and then I don't have a button control to click, but I can, if I have a button on the form, I can actually click a button with this custom task. So this is a really useful custom task that goes well beyond just the basics that we have in the show alert text. So a lot of customers I have found really prefer the advanced alert. And as you can see, here's the footer. I turned all the buttons off, which makes that less useful, but you can just click outside of it and it disappears. So that is a very useful custom task to use as well. And we have some customers that just swear by it and they use it all the time. Copy form data, we've already looked at, we discussed. It takes data from one form and converts it to another and allows you to map the fields. We looked at that. I don't think we need to take a look at it again. Convert to PDF is also the other really common custom task that you're going to use routinely, which again, we've already looked at. We've seen how it's configured. We're not going to go through all of that configuration again. All of these custom tasks are properly documented in the documentation, and you can see all of the different options that are available to you for invoking those custom tasks. And with that, I think we are done for the day. We're coming up to 11:30. I just wanted to cover the custom task basics and the most common custom tasks. Do a short one today because the last 4 have gone all the way up to end time. We're not going to do that today. We're going to take a more relaxing approach to this Thursday. Have a great week. I'll look forward to seeing you again next week. Until then, so long.